Welcome to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Today is Wednesday, May 8th, a dark, dark day in footballing history. We're fresh off of a devastating loss. Bayern Munich 1, Real Madrid 2 in the Champions League semifinals. We'll go through all that and maybe a couple of previews if we can muster it up too.
Could argue one of the largest chokes in the Champions League history, allowing that goal in the 88th minute, and an individual choke by a so-called great keeper.
A so-called GOAT, I would say. But yeah, if you watch the match, man, what can I even say? At this point, I'm sure I'm feeling like most Bayern Munich fans, pretty numb, pretty disappointed, pretty uncertain of where we go from here and what comes next. But I guess before all that, we can kind of go through our overall thoughts of this match, because for 87 minutes, it was a hard-fought, brilliantly played match by Bayern Munich, and then the last couple minutes plus stoppage time was totally hectic, totally chaotic, a train wreck for Bayern, and just madness, pandemonium on all ends of the pitch.
A team that I wouldn't say was doing everything correct, but the way they had played to be 1-0 up in the game to that point, they were stopping Real Madrid. Davies had scored a goal. They were moving things so-so, but Real Madrid wasn't doing a ton either. They were both bottling their chances. Nobody really wanted to take it. And then Real Madrid said, all right, I will take it. And Bayern couldn't quite muster up the courage to come back. I was disappointed as more of a neutral, somebody that wanted to see Bayern win. I would have loved to see that German-on-German matchup in the Champions League final. And not to mention, man, do I hate looking at Jude Bellingham. I just hate it. I hate it so much.
I would agree. This match as well as the first leg, Jude was pretty much neutralized, and it was up to the rest of the Real Madrid squad to really pull something together. And, lo and behold, like Madrid always does in the Champions League, they pulled out a win at the very last moment of the match with their dying breaths. And now they head off to Wembley for the final against Borussia Dortmund, who, respect to them, respect to German football. They knocked out PSG on the other side and are hopefully going to make Germany proud and do something that the other German team couldn't do.
That is one way to look at it. It's also your rival that completed and got to a point that you couldn't do, and that's got to be devastating for Bayern fans. I mean, you could argue the theme of Bayern's season, the two teams that they've gotten knocked down by, are two teams that always find a way to get it done, something that Bayern couldn't do. Those two teams I'm talking about, of course, Real Madrid and Bayer Leverkusen, two teams that fight tooth and nail to the end, finding ways to get it done. Unfortunately for Bayern, they haven't been able to do it against either of those teams in the league or in the Champions League. But yeah, it's got to be tough to see Dortmund make it, and you just were so close. Hopefully it's a good match on June 1st, but yep. I'll be rooting for Dortmund probably as a non-Bayern diehard.
Yeah, well, I can't even think about that match right now, to be honest, or what I'm going to be pulling for in that one. To rewind it back a little bit, just to go over this match and to kind of give you all the highlights as we're fresh off of it here. The match, like you mentioned, a lot of chances for both teams, a lot of missed opportunities for both teams, a lot of good saves from Neuer. But really the whole first half I thought was relatively even. I think Madrid played a little bit better. They had a few more chances, but overall in the first half it was 0-0, and both teams had a couple of very good chances that couldn't find the back of the net.
Yeah, it was interesting because Real Madrid had the more visible chances. Vinny Jr. was cooking Kimmich all day down that left-hand side. and then he'd round the corner, find somebody for a close chance, and they'd get a shot off a lot of the time, and it'd be close. Maybe Neuer would make a brilliant save. Dyer would throw his body in front of the shot, block it out of the way. Whereas Bayern, it felt like the chances that they were getting a lot of the times weren't materializing, but I would argue they were just as good of chances, where they'd be on the counter, would have a couple wide open lanes at times, and then just couldn't find that final pass. Kane a couple times couldn't thread it through, or whoever else was making the passes. But it was interesting because I felt like both teams should have had at least one goal in that first half.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And right off the bat, you had Serge Gnabry making a really nice move. Essentially, it was Serge. I forget who on Madrid was there, but Serge was going in, essentially looked like he was shooting it, and then saw Kane wide open at the last second and maybe tried to pass it. But what ended up happening was in between a shot and a pass, and it was a poor result. Like you said, they weren't materializing those chances, but that's just one example of, right off the bat, if Serge would have saw Kane a second sooner, he would have passed it to him for an easy goal.
Yeah, for me that was a tough one because when I was watching it live, I felt as though he should have shot it. I didn't see Kane originally live in that moment, so I can imagine it'd be even tougher for Serge in that moment to potentially see Kane. I realized he was wide open, and a smart footballer potentially makes that pass. I don't blame Serge a ton for that. The problem is that he didn't square up the shot either, so you got to decide one or the other. Am I going to square this shot up, probably near post, and beat the keeper, or am I going to tap it slower over to Kane for the wide open finish? And he didn't do either, unfortunately.
Yeah. There were quite a few of those in-between moments, really, for all of Bayern's attack. The same can be said for Musiala. The same can be said for Sané. And unfortunately for Bayern, you kind of knew this going in. Almost every attacking player on Bayern is injured. You had Sané and Musiala playing through injury, Gnabry playing through injury, who got injured and had to be subbed off. And it's just a shame because all these guys are fighting and they're trying to fight and they want to fight, but they just didn't have enough in the tank to really pull this one through. And then you have guys like Coman who have been the difference makers in Champions Leagues past who are also injured, and it really showed in the end of the match when all these guys are subbed off because they can't play a full 90 minutes, and then really all hell breaks loose.
It's tough because on one hand, I want to sympathize with that. I want to understand that it is tough in the moment. You've been building all season. You're fighting. You want to keep going. I understand you're going to be tired. The other side of the coin for me is I almost look at that as an excuse. As part of the game, you just got to find a way to fight through. I don't know if that's me saying Tuchel needs to not make some of those subs or to try to tell these guys to keep fighting. Maybe they literally couldn't and they were hurt. I'm not sure. I'm not the players. But I think to be a true champion, you got to find that extra last gear. And I think some of those Bayern players have that gear in them. Certainly Real Madrid showed that they have. Against City, it was a similar type match where they get it at the last second. So I think Bayern had that in them, and maybe the circumstances just weren't right for them to find it in the moment.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think, there's a couple different ways you can look at that. One, you could look at that as, okay, poor player management from Tuchel, who essentially ran guys like Sané into the ground by playing them through injury 90 minutes all season, no matter what. And the other side of the coin, basically, to parrot what you just said, is, Real Madrid clinched their league. They, last week they technically clinched their league and essentially had La Liga banked for weeks now. So, the last couple of weeks, Madrid didn't play a single one of their starters. So they were able to rest all of their starting players. And that happens because you have such a good season overall. So then the players that you really need for a match like this are completely fresh, And I guess for Bayern's behalf, Madrid didn't have a Leverkusen in their league, but realistically, you can look at that and say their dominant league performances allowed them this opportunity to have a fully healthy, fully rested squad.
So this really goes back to what we've been discussing week in and week out for these Champions League previews and Bundesliga match previews, rest versus momentum. We've been talking about how Bayern had all this momentum in the Champions League. They were looking, as they were playing in a good flow and together, communicating well, passing well, finishing well. But at the same time, we were saying maybe they should rest some of these guys in the Bundesliga matches to make sure they're ready for the Champions League. They kind of took the route of something in between where they were doing a little bit of both. We talked about certain matches. They were resting guys part of the game, wanted to still build some momentum. I think this past weekend it maybe hit a head where you had enough guys that really truly were injured. You had to make some tougher decisions. You ended up losing to Stuttgart in a tough match. So you lost the momentum as well, potentially. And maybe that was just too much for Bayern. It seems like everything was building up to this moment, and then they just kind of died right at the end.
Yeah, I mean that really is what happened, and it's still totally crazy to think about because, you go into the match. I made my prediction that Bayern was going to win, and I went into the match with a lot of hope. And then you're watching the match, and then in the second half, Bayern didn't look great to start. I thought Madrid looked much better for most of the second half. But then you get this goal from Alphonso Davies in the 87th minute, a brilliant goal. Davies is only playing because Gnabry's hurt. And so, Bayern maybe has a couple chances but can't do anything with them. Madrid has a lot of chances. And then in the 87th minute, like I said, Davies scores this incredible flash of individual brilliance. And at that point, and I keep saying in the 87th minute, which that's obviously a lie. That's when Madrid scored. But what I mean is up until the 87th minute, with Davies' goal, you have all this hope and all this joy. And you start to think, like, this is it. Like, we fought all season to get to this point.
Can I hear you say some sort of phrase where you're nice about Davies? I almost want you to take back part of what you said, because if they would have held on, he would have been a hero for all Bayern Munich fans. I mean, I know they ended up losing, but you have to admit, he provided you that moment of joy that you'll always be able to look back on, even if it was only for 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was a brilliant goal. I got to give it to Davies. That was, it was a nice setup from Kane with the assist and just a completely individual effort for that goal. And man, to do that in Madrid at that stage, that was Davies' first Champions League goal ever. I mean, there's really no words for how good of a moment that was and how high of a joyous experience that was that he brought us. So thank you, Alphonso Davies.
I mean, I couldn't stop thinking about how great it was going to be to have to see you take back everything you said about Davies, start worshiping him at his feet. I mean, it would have been an incredible moment for me personally and professionally to see with the podcast.
Professionally?
It's a professional podcast, so I have to say professional.
Yeah. Man. So yeah, that was basically how things went. There were a few little chances here and there after that. I guess I should shout out one of Kane's shots earlier in the second half, before Davies' goal was brilliant. I don't even know how to describe it, but he kind of caught it and turned around quick and just fired a rocket right next to the post. But yeah, I guess go check out the highlights if you want to see everything. And then, yeah, it got to the point where Bayern started to sub out their attacking players. Tuchel subbed out Zane, and you had Kim come in, and he subbed out Kane, which was a crazy move, an absolutely crazy move, because, even though you're a few minutes away from victory, you got to have in the back of your mind what happens if Real gets one back, and like they always do, and then what happens for extra time, what happens for pens. But yeah, Musiala also got subbed out at that point, so they really had no attackers, and it was kind of wild.
To be fair to my boy Tommy Tukes, who I shouldn't say my boy, he really isn't at this point, especially if he goes to Man United, but he probably was desperately playing for winning in that 90. I think he knew that everybody on his team was cooked in terms of their physical ability at the time of the match. They were obviously very tired. I think he wanted to bring what's-his-face in for Kane just because maybe Kane was tired. You get some fresh legs in there. It's all about fresh legs at that point, and you're just hoping that they can hold on, hold the line, hold the wall of defense, and that's what he was going for, in my opinion. Clearly didn't work out in that way, although I wouldn't really say the goals that Real Madrid scored were because these guys came in. I don't think if Kane's in there, they're not scoring, for example, but I think that was what was going through his mind. He probably wasn't even thinking about extra time or pens because he either didn't want it to get there or was assuming if it gets there, they're going to lose anyway.
Yeah, I mean that's really the only way you can describe it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously looking at it now, it looks like a bad decision, but if they would have just pulled out those last couple minutes, it looks like a great decision because then you're saying, oh, all these defensive guys, came in and held it down, these fresh legs, like you said. But yeah, then in the 87th minute, you have a bad bounce, you could say, and also just a bad play by Manuel Neuer, who tries to catch the ball and it ricochets off of him. And then the guy who scored this goal, I honestly don't know. He's a sub for Madrid, Joselu. I don't even know if that's how you say his name correctly.
Yeah, it's either Joselu or Yaselu. He basically got picked up kind of on loan with a small $1.5 million buy option, was actually in the league below La Liga playing for Espanyol, who's I think going to get promoted, but kind of a late signing as a backup striker. Just a pure instinctual goal for him. Crazy story. It's going to be something he'll remember forever. The fans will worship him forever in Madrid. And I got to say, as much as I love and respect Manuel Neuer, and he had a phenomenal match, don't get me wrong, but in that moment for that to occur, I know the bounce is tough. It isn't ideal. But he'll tell you that he expects to save that and catch that securely 99 times out of 100. So it sucks in that moment, in the crucial moment, for him to screw that up.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what makes this match so devastating. It seems like it was, devastating in 500 different ways, all in the span of 5 minutes time. It was completely like just gut-wrenching, and I almost feel sick to my stomach right now still just thinking about it, just because of how much went wrong so fast, and we're not even like halfway done with the things that went wrong. And again, keep in mind that first goal was in the 87th minute, and then lo and behold, I think it was maybe the 91st or 92nd. It was into stoppage time. Old boy scores again.
And let me just rewind real quick to Neuer again, because I'm already thinking about how he's going to be remembered one day. And I hate to ask this question, but you have to ask, who has the worst hands between Manuel Neuer
Don't say it.
and Brandon Bostic?
I knew it. I knew that was coming to a head. Two of the most painful sporting moments in my young life, I will say, and that maybe I'm cursed, maybe it's not Kane, maybe it's not Tuchel, maybe it's me.
For those out there listening that are not familiar with the name Brandon Bostic,
don't look it up.
You shouldn't be familiar because he's an absolute nobody scumbag who I respect on a personal level, but not on a professional level at all. Brandon Bostic was a tight end for the Green Bay Packers who, in the year, I believe 2014, had one of the more miserable moments of everyone in Wisconsin's lives when he botched an onside kick. And I reference those hands because what you saw from Manuel Neuer was essentially what happened to Brandon Bostic that day.
Yeah, and it really is a shame because, like we said earlier, that performance from Neuer for those first 87 minutes was truly, truly remarkable. I mean, Madrid could have had 2 or 3 goals easy up to that point. But I guess there's a reason why Neuer is always in these moments and usually steps up. Was stepping up all match until that goal. But yeah, then you get to the second goal in the 92nd minute or something like that, which I guess I should mention was reviewed whether it would be offside or not, because that kind of comes back into play. But lo and behold, it was a goal, and at that point, really all hell breaks loose.
The key here is that the way the onside or offside debate for this particular Real Madrid goal happened was it was super quick in that from the pass right to the goal, there was no time for a ref to potentially say, is this onside or offside? Either way, I'm a proponent of always letting plays go through, and we'll discuss what happens later in the match coming up here shortly, but that's kind of the key there, is it happened so quick that even though they did call offside originally, they were able to let it go through because it did happen so fast. And I got to say, it was a brilliant little pass from Nacho to find Rudiger on that left-hand side, who with one touch delivered it on a string to Yaselu for his second goal. I mean, beautiful pass by Rudiger. I love Rudiger. I didn't necessarily see him play at Chelsea. He was gone by the time I became a fan, but won a Champions League with Chelsea. So to see him still have success does warm my heart a little bit. And the reason, obviously, for the onside call, the ball was ahead of the goal scorer. So it was a clear onside. Unfortunate for Bayern that it had to be overturned. And once again, something I'll always harp on, it sucks that you can't celebrate in the moment. You got to feel for Real Madrid fans that they couldn't quite celebrate right away.
Oh, come on.
I know it's tough to say.
I don't feel anything for Real
pod.
Madrid fans right now.
I just hate that part of the review. It just really sucks, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was definitely onside. But I think the key here is that, like you said, play goes on. You let them play. Obviously, in this instance, there wasn't really time to or to not make a call right away before the goal was scored. But the key is you have to be able to review it. So you let it happen, and then, a call is made, a call isn't made, and then it's reviewed. In a crucial moment like this, in a crucial match like this, you just, you gotta take a look, and this was definitely a goal for Real Madrid. And then afterwards, truly just frantic, I don't even know what word to use outside of frantic play ensues, really from Madrid and from Bayern, because at this point, it's stoppage time and like all hell breaks loose. Bayern is desperately trying to score a goal. Madrid is running around. Emotions are high. Things are crazy.
Yeah, so they had that goal scored, which I think they say you add a minute on. Maybe it's 2 minutes. I tell you what, they had that 9 minutes originally. You add that goal, so you add 2 minutes on that, let's say. This ref kept the game going on for so much longer than I think anybody anticipated, which was fine for somebody like me who was hoping Bayern would find a way to score and find that equalizer, but holy smokes, I kept thinking, if I'm a Madrid fan, I'm screaming at my TV at this ref for just a terrible decision.
Well, here's the thing that I didn't mention earlier either. In stoppage time before that or maybe it wasn't in stoppage time, but it was right up, between the 87th and the 92nd minute. So it was at the end of the game, might have even been in stoppage time. You have the youngster, just turned 20 years old, Alexander Pavlovic on Bayern, midfielder, started and played the whole match instead of Leon Goretzka, which is an interesting decision, but he goes down injured. And so that also might be part of the extra time added on. Pavlovic goes down. So Bayern is playing with 10 men at that point. And I'm not saying that is or isn't why Madrid scored again, but it certainly didn't help. An injured squad down to 10 men after 90 minutes of football. It really is a recipe for disaster at that point.
Yeah, that's true. They did have that injury. I assumed that's why they extended it a little bit more. He came off fairly quick, I thought, and they didn't stop it a ton. But, yeah, obviously tough there at the end, playing with 10. I still thought Bayern could have done a better job really trying to make it a frenetic pace and push, push, push. I know it's not the easiest thing to do, especially when Real at that point is a goal up and they're going to try to defend you like crazy. I don't know. I thought Bayern looked a little more panicked than I was expecting. We've talked about them all season being this experienced team. They did sub some key guys out. Maybe that was part of it. Not ideal when you have guys like Kane that have been subbed out and then lo and behold, you need a goal, and he's not there.
Yeah, I mean, really at that point, you had no Kane, no Musiala, no Zane, no Gnabry, and then let alone the other players that were already hurt and out for the match. You don't have Pavlovic either, who is that kind of like a little bit more offensive of a midfielder. So at that point, you're really grasping at straws. Although there was a straw to be grasped at, because in the very, very dying seconds of the game, you had a goal from Matthijs de Ligt, which was ruled offside, unreviewable. And, I mean, if you look at it, he was onside, which, again, it sucks that you're unable to review that type of a play because the whistle's blown so early, but, I feel bad for the guy. He scored a goal that was disallowed.
Feel bad? I mean, I would be downright pissed off if I'm the entire franchise of Bayern Munich. You have this ref who comes out after and apparently is telling de Ligt, sorry, yeah, I made a mistake. You were onside. Sorry? I mean, are you kidding me? That's absurd to admit. You know, you see this all the time with these umps and refs and these people that are supposed to be managing fouls and managing the game. You have all these reports now that come out in sports that say, oh, they were right, they were wrong after the game. That's one thing. Now you have a ref actually admitting that he was wrong. Maybe you looked at it as he rigged the game, if you're that type of conspiracy theorist. But he's literally admitting he was wrong in a Champions League semifinal leg 2 that would have sent the game to extra time. You could argue that is one of the biggest blunders in the history of football. History.
Okay. I know we're all trying to get some emotion out of me here in this brutal moment, but you're right. You're right with all that. If you want some really pissed off interviews, go listen to de Ligt's interview. I mean, yeah, he straight up says, look, the official told me that he made a mistake. Tuchel says the same thing. Tuchel, is extremely pissed right now. Why wouldn't you be? Bayern directors, Max Eberl, sporting director. If you want to listen to an angry German, listen to him talk after the match, because yeah, holy shit, that was a really, really, really bad call. That, I mean, it is inexcusable. As I was alluding to earlier, whether it is or isn't, and in this case, it should have been a goal, you have to see what happens and then review it afterwards, because you can fix or confirm what you were, calling if you let it happen and then review it afterwards.
I will say the one piece to add here is that he blew the whistle so early, the main ref, after seeing the linesman's call, that the keeper was not involved in the play. It was a brilliant strike by de Ligt, but I will add that piece of information because Lunin was not trying to stop the shot. I'm not saying he would have stopped it. I think it was a good enough strike that it would have gotten in either way. But there was some stoppage by some of the defense there. Still think it's a goal, as I said, if you let the play continue. I just had to add that. And I will say this has been one of the largest problems in reffing in this football, in American football, with these types of plays where there's potential foul, potential flag, in American football, a potential fumble. You got to let plays continue on. You just have to, whether it's for just a few seconds or passes, you're not letting play go on for years, obviously, to see something develop. But you just have to let it play out because in this case, we were robbed of just an all-time equalizer in that moment, and we would have been blessed with more free football to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, I'm not one of those guys who's gonna go out there and say it's rigged for Madrid. You hear that a lot, especially at home, especially in the Champions League. Madrid finds a way to get it done. They always have. They seemingly always will at this rate, and with the rumored transfers that they're likely going to get. And you look at this squad, they're kind of doing the perfect thing of transferring the guard from their old veterans into these bright young stars. But anyways, you look at that call, you look at how the entire match played out, you look at the bounce that happened, that, the ball that Neuer saves 99 times out of 100. You look at Bayern's injuries, you look at the subs that Tuchel made, you look at how the entire season has kind of coalesced into this one moment. These last couple minutes of the match is really a grander metaphor, I think, for Bayern's entire season. And, maybe my thoughts will be different when I'm less numb to all this that's happening right now, but it seems like this is just what's going to happen. This is, it's Real Madrid, it's Champions League. I mean, they've won 13, 14 times, and it's like you can have all the talent in the world, you can have the best tactics, the best coaching, the best roster, but in these types of moments, you just need a little bit of luck. And Bayern didn't have it today. Madrid had it, as they always do.
So I wasn't going to bring this up and say this, my true thoughts and opinion on the result, but since you brought up this grand metaphor and feeling on the season, I feel like it's necessary. And I can't help but slightly smirk as I'm bringing this up because I think ultimately in this moment, it's my opinion, and we'll look back years from now, and I strongly believe that you might have this opinion too, that this is the best result for not only the ABC podcast, but for your fandom, you being a fan for Bayern Munich. I don't think you can step right in and win a Champions League, easily win the Bundesliga. I think you need to suffer just a little bit. It hasn't been easy for me as a Chelsea fan, and now it's a little rough for you as a Bayern fan. I think we'll look back at this and celebrate the fact that you started with a bumpy road and you're just going to take the next step and fly towards something even greater years down the line.
I don't know what could be greater than a first season Harry Kane first trophy Champions League. But I guess time will tell about that one, because either you're right and I look back on years of trophies and years of dedication and highs and lows, and especially highs. But the other thing that could happen is, not to be completely pessimistic, but you look at where the club is right now, you look at their management situation from the standpoint of coach and, higher up board direction, all that stuff right now seems very, very unclear. So the other side of the road is we go down a dark path of rebuilding that never, restores Bayern to this former glory that we all knew and loved.
If something happens where Bayern were to never win trophies when you're a fan, I would say that's the most shocking thing in the history of the world. You look at their history, their track record of success. I'm not saying they're going to win all these trophies next year. Maybe they have another tumultuous year. I'm sure they probably will. But I don't think there's much worry to be had about what's coming for sure in the next 2, 3, 7, 10, 20, 50 years even. I think we might be old men eventually, sitting next to a couple holograms of Harry Kane and Misha Mudryk and talking about the good times that we had as fans.
Yeah, we'll definitely see, because this really goes one of two ways, and one way that this could go is doom and gloom. People keep turning down the Bayern coaching job. They have all these one-year coaches that don't work. all the players, not all the players, but the players like, Kimmich, Goretzka, Musiala, all these guys that you're kind of talking about, Sané, like, oh, they could be the future of the club. They leave. They decide, you know what, we didn't have enough backing from the club during this season, seasons going forward, whatever the case may be. They leave. Bayern never truly gets those stars back. Leverkusen has a dynasty, whatever the case may be. Or the other thing that could happen is this type of a match lights a fire underneath these guys. These guys become ultimate competitors. Kane somehow gets even more hungry. Don't know how that could be possible, but he breaks his own goal scoring records in the Bundesliga every year, and the Champions League, comes around, and the Champions League final is in Munich next year, and they lift it up for their hometown crowd. They get a good young coach who, continues to light this fire and stoke this fire and turns Bayern into another dynasty, and glory is to be had overall. So, you really just don't know what's going to happen. The only thing you can say for certain is you got to keep supporting and you got to keep watching.
As long as they have Harry Kane, they're not going to give up, and they're not going to lay down and say, we're not trying to build a team with success. You don't have a player like that as your main striker and main star and not try to build around him. You'd be foolish not to. Forget managerial discussions. Forget all that other outside noise. No matter what, they're going to put together a team of players that know how to compete and know how to fight to become a champion. This is what champions are made of. This is where you find out, does this Bayern team have what it takes to become a champion? Does Harry Kane have what it takes to go back into the lab in the offseason, get better at the Euros, get better at scoring, score more goals? Okay, you had 35 goals in the league. Get more next time. Be better. This is where guys like Sané and Musiala look themselves in the mirror and say, how am I going to get better? What things can I do to make the next step and be better for this team and for our fans? And I think they have the right amount of ingredients to make some key decisions and do the right things to get better as a team. And I really couldn't be more excited to see that.
Yeah, we'll see. I would like to agree with what you're saying overall. The summer is going to be tumultuous in terms of coaching and in terms of player turnover. Everybody's talking about there has to be this huge squad overhaul at Bayern. So, we'll see what happens. We got a couple of Bundesliga matches left, which I guess watch those if you want to see Kane try to chase a record. But yeah, I guess otherwise we I don't even know what to say. We of course hang our heads high. We always hang our heads high, but I'm still honestly processing this match and trying to figure out all of what went wrong in the last 10 minutes. But yeah, we'll try to hang our heads high.
If I'm Bayern, my plan for these next couple games, play Kane, let him chase the record, fine. Anybody else who's slightly injured, rest them, don't even put them on the bench. Bring up some young guys. Try to see what you got cooking for some of the players that will be key going forward for the next few years. Say goodbye to Tuchel for these last two games. He's not winning the Champions League. You might as well just get rid of him at this point. He's just a distraction. Fans are going to keep signing these petitions to try to keep him to stay. Shut those fans up and just say, he's out of here. Let him go to Man United. I don't care at this point.
Let him go back to Chelsea.
Don't let him come back to Chelsea. I don't want him right now.
Man
Sorry,
United
Tommy.
still has a coach too.
Ten Hag is a joke of a coach. I hope Man United keeps him.
But
if I'm Bayern, just put Mueller as your player coach. I don't even care at this point. These next two games, I just think mean nothing except for letting some young guys battle it out and try to gain momentum and confidence, and letting Kane do his thing with the record. And whatever comes of it is fine. You celebrate with some fans just to end the year and hope things get better in the offseason.
It's true. And I'm not even going to go over player ratings for this match. It's just too devastating to even think about. Honestly, most of the team played fine to good. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about that. But yeah, I guess speaking of Bundesliga, we got Wolfsburg for a Mother's Day special. We'll see what happens there. I agree with what you said. There's a couple guys that you got to get minutes. You got to get Tell minutes. You got to get Pavlovic minutes. These are just the young guys. You got to keep playing Kane. And other than that, it's like, you're probably going to play Upa. You're probably going to play Kim just at center back. And who knows, maybe try out Davies as a winger.
Do your best to play well for all the moms out there. But ultimately, if you're a mom and a fan of Bayern Munich, it's probably best if you just take the day off. Take it as a day of rest. Those German moms probably don't even celebrate Mother's Day on this day, so they won't even know what I'm talking about. But for the moms that are in the United States celebrating, spend the time with your family, be around ones that you love, and not watching the team that you love, because it's a day for you, not a day for the team.
That's really the only thing that I think I've got here to give me some life and some joy. I think I'll spend these next couple days with family and friends and just forget about the world of football for a little bit. Remember all that's left in this beautiful global sensation of a world that we have.
Sounds like you're dead, but I agree. And if there's one thing I'd suggest, it is watching Miracle, which is on Disney+. Great film. Herb Brooks, an icon. For those of you that don't know him, then you're just not a true American. For those of you that are Soviets listening, screw you.
Nice. Well, would you recommend watching Chelsea on Saturday?
I really would, because I actually couldn't be happier as a fan right now where my team is. Chelsea are firing on all cylinders, scoring a ton of goals, keeping clean sheets. They look awesome right now. Confidence is high. Poch is smiling. The players are smiling. Fans are smiling. Todd Bailey's out here saying he's loving how the team looks. I mean, things couldn't be better. So now they're probably going to lose to Forest, but I'm very confident going in. I think it'll be a great match. Not going to say a ton necessarily because there's not much to preview besides hoping that they just go out there and do what they've done these last 2.5 matches and play that type of game.
Totally. I think, at this point, I will forget about sports for a few days, and then I think I'll try to come into that Chelsea match with a clean, bright head, because for some reason, as much as I thought you were going to say Poch is high in that last rant, I don't know where my head was at. I'm clearly running on fumes at this point, emotional fumes after that horrific 100 or so minutes of play. Poch is high, the team is high. You're right. The whole aura surrounding Chelsea right now is something that I want to be a part of. So maybe I'll just throw my eggs in that basket for the rest of the season and get on board with these beautiful Blues.
Forget the eggs. Throw your lemons in that basket. I've gotten reports that say the lemons are the brightest and most beautiful yellow that anybody has seen at Stamford Bridge. It's crazy, apparently.
You really have a lot of insiders. When you went over to London, you must have picked up a couple of guys on the inside.
Hanging out in a lot of pubs, you meet some people, you socialize with some people, you find out some little tidbits of information, and then you make moves. You make money moves.
Wow, I really don't have anything to say. I honestly don't have anything to say for the rest of this show if you're good to go.
Yeah, let's just hope for a nice Chelsea win, hope for Bayern to show up and at least play, and then we'll go from there.
All right, well, we'll see. Maybe this was enough therapy to turn things around. It was enough therapy for me to at least say, go Bayern.
Up the Chelsea.